I'll tell you that. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a hedge fund manager or anything. I'm just a guy. Um, I grew up. I grew up poor, to be honest. And so my mom taught me all the skills of a penny pincher. And then I had to unlearn some of those once I actually had money to manage. And I've had to learn a whole bunch of other stuff too that growing up in poverty doesn't teach you. And so I've learned a lot of that from Dave Ramsey from FPU. We do that class every fall. You should definitely do it. And just other people that God's put in my path. You know, when I see people who look like they're stewarding what they have, or just people I respect, I just pick their brains. So a lot of what I'm going to share with you tonight is just my personal experience. If you know anything about Dave Ramsey or stuff he preaches, I'll just use the word preaches because it's pretty much that's what it is. Not everything I say is going to match up with Dave's philosophy exactly, and that's fine because you guys are adults, and I expect that you can use your, I almost said jurisdiction, your discernment to kind of have a biblical perspective through all of it. All right, and I am not a professional public speaker, and I also ramble a lot, so I'm going to try to read mostly word for word from this, otherwise I'll just take forever. All right, so I said all of that. Okay, so the first section is going to be the dad talk part. I have it broken down into like earning, giving, saving, investing, retiring, taxes. There's some other stuff. But I wanted to put the challenging one first, and then we'll get into all the interesting stuff. So earning. The main thing is I'm just making a reasonable assumption that most of you guys are in your 20s. I have just recently exited my 20s, so I'm officially very old. The main thing I have to tell you guys about earning is don't get content in your 20s. Now, I want to disclaim that with, if you are working in a capacity that has a purpose greater than your income, then keep doing that. You're making an impact in the world, and you should try to get yourself in as good a financial position as you can, but don't sacrifice a job that has purpose for a job that pays really well. Don't do that. That's not what I'm saying here. But what I am saying is, if you had the experience I did with, you go through 12 years of school, finish college, and you get a reasonably good job, and you think, all right, I made it. This is it. I promise you haven't. And you really shouldn't get content then, because it might feel like you don't have a lot of responsibilities. But if you look at your working life with a really long perspective, your responsibility in that time is to secure your future so that as you get older and more people end up depending on you, whether that's a spouse or children, or the one we don't think about enough, but your parents when they get old enough, you want to have that stability ready so that you can have the flexibility to be kind and generous to them. So the first way I want to talk about that is the thing that convicts me every day when I think about stewardship, and it's the parable of the talents. Just kind of skip to the important part. So Jesus is talking about he's doing different parables about what the kingdom of God is like. There's a lot of those. This one, he talks about how the kingdom of God is as if there was a rich ruler who had 3 servants, and he gave each of them 1 shekel, 2 shekels, and 5 shekels, and then he went away. And then this is talking about how each of those servants responded to that calling. He who had 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now after a long time the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. Pay very close attention to this next part. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Okay. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward saying, You gave me 2, I made 2 more, blah, blah, blah. And then the master says to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Take notice of how similar those two are. He also who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping what you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. I don't know all the theological implications of that sentence. I'd be interested to learn from Alex. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But his master answered him, "You wicked and slothful servant, you knew that I reap what I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has, not even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." So God has a pretty strong opinion on stewardship, as we can tell from his response to the last servant. But the really important part I wanted you to pay attention there is the fact that God gives the exact same response to the servant that produced 5 more and the servant that produced 2 more. Because God cares about the condition of the heart. He doesn't care about what you ultimately produce financially or your bottom line. He cares about your heart. And both of those servants had the same heart. So with all that said, don't worry about min-maxing. Don't worry about how can I hit the next stock, whatever, to 10x my money or some shenanigans. Do wise and feasible, wealth growth, creation, and retention practices without falling into any sort of thought that, well, I have to make as much money as possible because that's what God's calling me to do. That is not biblical. God just cares about your heart. All right. I don't have that in this part. Oh no, that's in the retiring part. Okay, and then something else I want to share about earning. If you ever feel intrepid enough to start your own business, be prepared to have enough margin in your life to continue with your current employment, your full-time job, while you start up your business for at least a period of time until your business stabilizes. And I say this from experience. This year, both my wife and I started our own consultancies separate, and we've just discovered that when it comes to contracts and clients, it's a really different thing from your W-2 salary job. And don't jump ship on your full-time job right away, but do lay the groundwork for your business so that you can be successful at both for a very challenging and grueling couple of months while you make sure that this is what you really want to switch to. So if that means relying on somebody, if that means moving in with your parents for a little bit strategically, just have that plan ready, because you don't want to just quit your job and start being an entrepreneur. At least I don't recommend it. All right, giving. Never, ever stop tithing. I know you're going to come up with reasons. You're going to be challenged with things that you want to purchase. Don't do it. I can say from experience, I've been tithing ever since I've been working. I've been working pretty much nonstop since I was 14, and God convicted me to tithe off of my $200 paychecks I was making in high school. And I don't believe in prosperity gospel that if you give to God, He will always give you back more financially. But I do believe that in stewardship, that is the thing that God cares about, and the thing that will posture your heart properly towards your finances, that they are there to serve the kingdom. But also, like it said in the parable, to him who has some, I'm not going to quote it because I'm going to say it wrong. But there's something to be said about your heart always having a proper view of God and money. The only time I would say, and this is what Dave Ramsey says, that you should ever not tithe is if it's literally the difference of providing bare necessities for you and your dependents. So if it's the difference between you and your Netflix subscription, you cancel Netflix and you do your tithe. If it's the difference between you and paying your rent, you don't tithe and you pay your rent. And you come talk to Alex or Pastor Jared, and we have financial counseling here at the church. And that's for anybody. So it's not just for single moms with a bunch of kids and in really desperate states. For anybody who is having challenges with their finances. So seek the resources that are available and do not be ashamed to pursue that. So giving. Loaning money. Never loan money to anybody under any circumstance unless you're a bank. So if you're not a bank, you don't loan money. The reason you don't loan money is because it creates stress in relationships that you can't get around. No matter what words are said between two individuals, if there is an outstanding loan, it'll change the dynamics of your relationship. If you are in a position to help somebody, you should just help them. And it should be explicitly clear that this is a gift, and it should be an opportunity to share the gospel and share God's love in that moment. But at the same time, you have to exercise wisdom. And, if it's going to mean that you can't pay your rent, you don't have enough money to give. And that's just the bottom line. and that's challenging and convicting. But God recommends wisdom all the time, and it's not wise to put yourself in financial straits to help somebody else, because then, what's that, robbing Peter to pay for Paul? Am I using that right? I don't know. No debts in interpersonal relationships, bad thing. Saving. Personal checking account. I think most of us probably have a personal checking account. Oh, also, something I should say so it doesn't stress you guys out. Alex is going to have the full document available online, so write down what you find to be helpful, but if you feel like you miss anything, you'll be able to reference it later. Obviously, writing down is best for memorization, totally, but don't get stressed about missing anything. All right, so have a personal checking account, obviously, for paychecks to get deposited into, regular bills to come out of, so on and so forth. Do not, under any circumstances, put any money in a savings account, ever. Does anybody have any idea why I might be saying that? Savings accounts will lose you money. Inflation, on average, is 3%. This year, it's 8%. Savings accounts used to return 4% only like 15 years ago, and now they return 0.0025%. So you're losing money in a savings account. Now it's hard to even beat inflation in any capacity. It's just hard. CDs are also terrible. They're only marginally better. Your best bet for secure money, meaning, I should say, money that you're not investing in the stock market and could possibly lose, is a money market account. Now, you might say, what is a money market account? I don't actually know. I just know it's different. And the way that it's different has to do with the bank. They just do something different with your money, something, but you still have all the same FDIC insurance. There is no lack of protection to your funds then. But a money market account right now is all the way up to 1.5%. So look at that. We're losing less money to inflation. So that's great. The only other con with a money market account is you'll have less check writing and debit transactions. It'll be like $5,000 a month max, and that's plenty for me. And the main thing is that this account isn't supposed to be for your daily transactions. That's your checking account. This money market account should only be for short and long-term savings. So it's funds that you're not planning on touching much anyways. Don't go to your bank to open a money market account. They'll give you a terrible one. Find one of the online ones. Like I have one for Ally, and there's just literally a litany of other ones out there. So long and short-term savings, go in a money market account. The main thing that should be in your money market account, along with any other savings goals you have, if you're saving up for a car, put it in there. If you're saving up for a gift or a trip or something, put it in there. But the main thing that should be in there is your emergency fund. Dave Ramsey talks a lot about this, and he has a very robust process for it, and I will let him tell you about it when you take FPU. Take FPU. But the basic rule of thumb is, pardon me, I had to eat really quickly before I came here because of things today, so I might be kind of burpy. All right, so the rule of thumb is to keep a 3 to 6 month emergency fund liquid all the time. Liquid means you can access it today. In money market funds, you can access today, so it's fine to put it in there. The trick of it is figuring out, well, should I do 3, 4, 5, or 6? Because that's a huge difference, especially if your monthly expenses are $1,500. I want to know exactly how much. You have to figure out what your monthly expenses are, so you have to start budgeting. If you haven't budgeted before, do it. There's a lot of apps you can try it on, and the main thing is trying, not succeeding. You will fail to make a good budget for the rest of your life. So you just have to try and keep trying and not stop trying. That's pretty discouraging to say. You'll get better at it, but you'll keep being bad at it. I've always been bad at it. But you have to find out what your expenses are. If you don't know what they are, you don't know what you need to save. So you spend some time figuring that out, tracking your expenses month to month. Then, how much do I save? If you're single, you save 3 months' expenses. If you're married on dual income, so you're both working, both have income, once again, 3 months is fine. It's totally fine. But once you have dependents and you're on like a single income household, you want to get closer to that 6 month mark. So, 3 months if you're single or 3 months if you're married with dual income. But if you have any dependents and you're on single income, start working up closer to that 6 months. Don't do anything more than 6 months. It's not necessary unless you have a really good reason for it, because there's other things you need to use your money on, like retirement. Hey, that was a segue compared to my other ones. Now, you guys probably don't care all that much about retirement. I always felt like the weird guy in my friend group that I cared anything about retirement. I just know that everyone in my family worked until they died, and it was sad to watch. People working when they're late in life and their bodies are failing them and they'd rather be spending time with their family is a very tragic thing. God designs us to work, but he doesn't design us to sacrifice the other things that are good about life just because we need to survive. That's why we need to plan and we need to do things ahead of time. So this category I called investing and retirement. Here's my investing hot takes first. Don't take investing advice from anyone that doesn't have any money. Like I said, I grew up in poverty, and my mother took great care of us, but she doesn't have any money, and she always tries to tell me about investing stuff. My father is a wannabe day trader who has just lost so much money his whole life, and he tries to tell me stuff, and I just smile and nod. If you're going to take investing advice from anybody, make sure they have money. Otherwise, it's probably not a good idea to listen to them. Also, this one I'm just going to blow right through. You can't invest in cryptocurrency because it's not investing. It's speculating. And if you disagree with me, it's not like I'm going to be able to change your mind, so we'll just move on. Don't buy individual stocks. You guys probably have heard Warren Buffett's name. He's like 90% of my YouTube algorithm at this point. And he says this too. His whole deal is picking stocks and valuing companies, but he does that all the time, and he's been doing it for 70 years. He says the average person doesn't know how to value a company, and it's not really worth your time to do it. Additionally, index funds, buzzword, an index fund is a fund of dozens, if not hundreds, of individual stocks that are put together in some sort of genre or, I don't know, just collection. Like there might be an index fund for a specific industry or something. Index funds have outperformed like individual day traders and hedge fund managers pretty much every year with very few exceptions. So if you want to be the world's greatest investor, well, good luck with that. But if you want, all right, here is the whopper. In terms of retirement, if you are intentional in saving and moderate in your consumption and lifestyle, so realize that's the scales there. Put a lot of weight and intentionality on the saving and be as light as you can on your consumption and lifestyle. If you have that balance, it is within the realm of possibility to fully fund your retirement during your 20s. Now, how can I say that with confidence? Because I can say that with confidence because you're the one who decides what your consumption is. I know a lot of times in this country, we talk about things about people not having a choice and, people running out of funds and whatnot, and that is true for a lot of people, but I'm going to say that living here in Stowe, Ohio, most of us have opportunities to save. Most of us have opportunities to cut back on our expenses. So that's what you're most in control of is your consumption and your lifestyle. Now, how can saving that amount of money lead to you fully funding your retirement in your 20s? Well, obviously, I'm not saying that you can save the hundreds of thousands of dollars that you're going to need to live off of when you retire in your 60s or 70s, or hopefully earlier. I'm not saying you can save hundreds of thousands of dollars in your 20s. I'm not saying that. This all depends on compound interest. Is this where I have my graphic? Maybe it's too early. Nope. Yeah, time for the graphic. Cool. I love this graphic. All right, so this is an update from Ramsey Solutions. It used to be two different guys, and now they just changed the names. So we have Jack and Blake. Jack is the guy on the top of the two, and you can see what it shows is at age 21, Jack started investing $2,400 a year, and he stopped at 30. Just flat out stopped. And inversely, Blake saved nothing until he was 30. Now, you can see the nice graph and all this stuff, but let's look at the numbers. Jack only had to invest $21,000. Blake, on the other hand, invested $91,000, like 4.5 times more. And at the end of it, Jack, who invested a fourth, has $1 million more at the end of their lives. They're not dead at 68. When they retire, I guess. Man, that's depressing, 68 retirement. So the main thing being here is that being younger, time is on your side. And that's why, as funny as it sounds, your top priority at this time should be saving up for your retirement. Now, you set your own priorities. I am just saying that if I had to make a choice, it would probably be that. You have your debts, and you need to manage your debts. And I'm going to let Dave Ramsey talk to you more about debts. I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but he's going to be the guy who's really going to help you there. Balancing these things is always going to be up to your, I still can't think of a better word than jurisdiction. That's not the word I want. You need to decide that on your own. This is why I have an outline, because my thoughts are just scattered. Blah, 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 blah. Another reason why you want to do this is if you front load your retirement, then right now when you're single, possibly, before you have dependents in the form of a spouse or children or parents who depend on you, you could then have those funds available to serve those people in your life. Because I promise you, there's no harder choice than between two good things. And so if you have to choose between saving for your kids' college and saving for your retirement, it's going to be a really hard choice. It's always going to be hard. And so maybe before you have any kids, take care of retirement as best you can. Not saying you have to have kids, but you will end up having dependents at some point, even if it's just your parents. All right. Now, here's one thing that no one ever told me that irritated me to no end, that I finally have a reasonable rule of thumb that I got from other people, and that is how. How do I save for retirement? What's the order? What's the operation? What's a reasonably optimal way with no head scratching and a bunch of figuring? 3 simple steps. 4? Yeah, 3. First, if you have an employer-sponsored 401k account, usually there'll be a match. Nowadays, there not a whole lot out there. If you have a good match at your company, like anything above 3%, if they match your contributions up to 3%, then that's like whatever. But if you got something in the double digits, boy howdy. Put as much money in that thing as you can until you reach the maximum. Really, no matter what the match is. If there is a match, that's free money. And I won't get into all the logistics of that because they're just different at every company. Like my wife had a job where it was we matched 2.5% of the first 6% and then 5% of the next. It was so dumb, like you had to work it out on paper to understand it. You should do that with your particular situation. I'm not going to do it here because it's always different. So you want to fund that up until the point when you would hit the max match. Now, when I say max match, I mean you figure out the numbers from your employer. What is the most they'll give you in a year? You contribute as much as you need to hit that. All of your savings for retirement goes into that. You don't have to think about anything else. You just pop it in there. Now, once you've reached the point where you get the full match, we're going to pivot. We're going to come back to the 401k, but we're going to pivot for a little bit. Then you want to fully fund a Roth IRA with post-tax dollars to the federal annual maximum of $6,000. Now, this right here will normally cap out most people's surplus income. And so that's totally fine. That's why I kept this list short. I've seen some people that give a list of like, here's 12 things. And I'm like, how much money do you have? I don't have that much money to invest. So I just tried to keep it really short. Now, why are we talking about exiting the 401k? Well, your 401k, unless you have certain options, is going to be pre-tax dollars, which means you don't pay taxes on it now. And when you take the money out, when you're retired, you will pay taxes then. Here's the main problem. Right now, theoretically, statistically, you are in the lowest income and lowest tax bracket that you're going to be for the rest of your life. So contributing pre-tax dollars isn't to your advantage right now. You want to invest post-tax dollars because if you're right now only being taxed to 18%, and when you retire you might be being taxed at like 27%, you're going to want to pay 18 instead of 27. It's just really simple math. And so that's why the Roth IRA is what we want to pivot to as soon as we maxed out our match, because then you're paying at your low tax bracket into this Roth means post-tax, sort of. I won't get into all of that. I said that. Another really cool thing about a Roth IRA is that since you already paid taxes on the funds that you've contributed, if something comes up where you need those funds, an emergency happens, a health emergency, or you want to buy a house or something, it is infinitely easier to pull funds out of a Roth IRA than it is out of a 401k. 401ks, since it's pre-tax, the government has all their clause in it, and there will be stipulations and penalties and just a bunch of challenges. With the Roth IRA, whatever you put in, which is called your principal, you're always entitled to pull it back out. You can't pull out the interest until you retire, but you can pull out the principal, which is great. So it's got a lot of flexibility, a lot of advantages. It is the ideal investing vehicle for young people younger people after, I don't want to call you guys young people, you're like 4 years younger than me, it's not even that different. It's the ideal investing vehicle after you've gotten your employer match. Now, if somehow you're in a position where you have even more funds than that to manage, then you finish funding your employer-sponsored 401k account to the federal maximum of $20,500 annually. It's a ton of money. Once again, that caps out most people. If you've somehow crossed all of that, congratulations, you have a lot of money to manage, which means you have a lot of opportunity to love and serve the people around you. And you will do that this whole journey, but you're also going to try to, like I said, shore up your own financial situation so that you can be that servant. The last thing is, and this one's an interesting little trick, is does anybody know, you guys know what an HSA is? It comes with a high deductible healthcare plan. And the idea of it being is it's separate from your health insurance plan. It's an actual bank account that you are able to set aside pre-tax dollars to pay for your medical bills, which is great because it's considered double tax advantage in that sense. So it's tax advantage when you deposit the money because there is no tax coming out of it when you put it in. And then when you pull some money out to pay for a medical bill, once again, not getting taxed. Whereas if you go to the grocery store right now and you buy anything besides groceries, which I realize that's a bad example now, you will pay tax on your purchase. But an HSA can actually be triple tax advantaged if you invest it. And you have that privilege once you pass a certain threshold of like $1,000 or $2,000. So now the depositing tax advantage, withdrawing tax advantage, and growth is tax advantaged. So it basically becomes another retirement account. A lot of people actually put it at their first savings thing because they think it's that good. I don't think it's that good to do that with. That's why I put it last. And there's different federal maximums with that. I won't get into those. And when you reach federal retirement age, an HSA basically just becomes a normal retirement account. You are privileged to pull that money out to pay for any expenses, not just medical expenses. Granted, once you retire, you're going to have a lot of medical expenses because you're really old. Hopefully you can retire before you're really old, but, you know, doesn't happen for everybody in America. All right, credit cards. I'm going to tell you something this is the thing that's 100% opposite of what Dave Ramsey will tell you. And I say all that to say, I think that Dave Ramsey is 100% right. The reason Dave Ramsey is 100% right is because he makes a method to financial independence, financial freedom, I should say, 'cause that's his goal is financial freedom, that anybody can do, no matter their geeking or their discipline with money. Like, you can do Dave Ramsey's thing no matter what. So, yeah, all right. Disclaimer there. I'm going to say the sentence and then I'm going to qualify it. Every responsible adult should have one credit card. Now, what do I mean by that? I do not mean that you're not responsible if you don't have a credit card. That is absolutely not what that sentence means. What it means is, if you are not responsible with money, you should not have a credit card. If you have an uncle with a gambling problem, don't tell him to go get a credit card. So, if you are responsible with money, you should have one credit card. And I'll tell you why. The primary reason is because of the liability coverage. And I can't believe it took so long for me to understand this or to be communicated this to. I don't know. If you get your identity stolen with your debit card, someone steals your debit card number and they run some transactions, you are liable for those transactions. Now, you can go to your bank and say, hey, these are fraudulent, and try to get them overturned and try to get your money back. And it might happen. It might not. But it will be a headache either way. And God forbid you have something set up where you have, automatic withdrawal from your bank account. And like, I know like a lot of utility companies, they won't do payments with credit cards or debit cards. They only do bank account information. And also utilities have some like the worst data security ever. So I can totally see a world where they get hacked and my bank account information has now been stolen. And now I have to try to get these transactions reversed. And I have to open a new bank account or get them to change my numbers. And that sounds terrible. With a credit card, you have 100% liability coverage against fraudulent transactions, period. Any credit card in the United States. That's just how it works. So if someone charges $10,000 for a yacht rental on your credit card, you just call your card provider. It's overturned. You don't have to cancel your card. It's just done. You have no problems. That is the main reason you should have a credit card, because there's just so much data security problems in our modern world, and you just want to mitigate that as much as you can. Talked about that. And just the right way to use a credit card is take all of your bills that you can, if they'll let you, and put them on automatic payment on your credit card. And really cool thing that's pretty modern, because I don't think they had this when I got my first credit card like 6 years ago. You can enable automatic payments of any amount on your credit card, so you don't even have to look at it. You should look at it and make sure there's nothing fraudulent on there. But you can even tell it statement balance. And statement balance is the thing that matters. If you don't pay your whole statement balance, that's when you start paying interest. But if you pay your statement balance every month, you're fine. So I'm going to repeat the thing I said at the beginning one more time. If you find yourself not being responsible with money, do not get a credit card, and don't encourage anybody that might struggle with that to get a credit card. It is a tool in the modern age that is useful, but it can be a curse to some people. So be very careful with that advice, as I'm trying really hard to be right now. Also, another thing is, until you have literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in liquid cash available for large purchases, you're going to need to maintain a quality credit score to qualify for financing on large essential purchases. Now, large essential purchases, in my opinion, are homes and vehicles. Hopefully, you can pay cash for vehicles your whole life. But that's not always going to be the case. That's the goal, not always the case. Now, there is so few people in the world who are going to be able to buy a house in cash, especially in the last year. So even Dave Ramsey says you can get a mortgage. He recommends a specific mortgage, but you have to care about your credit score unless you want to never get financing for anything. You shouldn't finance televisions. You shouldn't finance computers. You shouldn't finance sneakers or pets. But you do have to finance cars sometimes, and you almost always have to finance a house. So, but if you have hundreds of thousands of dollars lying around, you don't need a credit card or a credit score. You just have money. Congratulations. And I hope that for all of you, but I'm not there, and I don't think any of you guys will be there soon either, because it's a pretty lofty goal. So care about your credit score, but don't care too much. Just use your credit card and pay it off. You'd be amazed how good your credit score is if you just use it and pay it off, and don't do any weird hacks and pay anybody to improve it. Like, I think I've got like a 700 something, and I've never done anything fancy. I just put my bills on it and I pay it off. Simple. And then if you do it for 40 years like my in-laws, then somehow you achieve an 800, and people just want to give you money for no good reason. Also, there's virtually no reason why you should have a credit card with an annual fee. If you do, call your card provider and ask them to downgrade you to another card without an annual fee, because any card provider has more than one card. And so if you decide that you really love this card and all its perks, and you want to crunch the numbers and decide if the annual fee is worth it, that's up to you. I don't think you should do it, but that's up to you. But instead of canceling the card and looking for another one, just downgrade it, and it won't interfere with your credit history, and it won't impact your credit score, blah, 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 blah. I shouldn't say blah, 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 because that's stuff in my head. That's not stuff in your head. So I will try not to do that. But I'm doing it again. Oh, also, some people pursue, pardon me. Some people will pursue having multiple credit cards for intro bonuses like points and whatnot. This is really only viable if you have a relatively substantial cash flow, because they'll have like minimum spends that you have to spend over a period of time, and that'll usually tempt you into spending money on things you shouldn't, and then you've completely lost the advantage. So I wouldn't recommend this to really most anybody. You might hear about people doing it. You're more than welcome to do it. It's usually not good for most people. All right, now one of my favorite things, taxes. You know what I didn't put in here is insurance. If you guys ever want to talk about insurance, I love insurance. It's fascinating. All right, taxes. You should do your own taxes for the first couple years of your working life. Don't let your dad do them for you perpetually. Sure, ask your dad for help. That's fine. But your dad shouldn't be doing your taxes for you 3 years after you've been working. Also, this is controversial, don't hire someone to do your taxes as soon as you get your first full-time job. Now, once again, this is different from Dave Ramsey. He recommends that everybody pays to have their taxes prepared with good reason, because on average, most people who pay a professional do get a higher tax return than if they do them themselves. I feel like he got that stat before tax preparation software existed, though, because if you ever used any tax preparation software, they're really, really great. They educate you while you're using them. So as much as you want to know, you can learn, and they just ask you questions that you can either have the answer right away, or you can go get the answer really easily, and it just prepares the whole thing for you, and you pay like $20 for it. Just do your own taxes. for a couple of years. If after a couple of years, then you want to pay someone, that is totally up to you. That's a luxury you can, you can go for. But you should understand it, because even if you pay someone, you still have to know what documents to provide to them. And when they send you, they will send you a like a mock-up of what they're going to submit to the government for you. You want to be able to look at it with some ability to understand if it's correct. I had a guy prepare my taxes 3 years ago, and I thought he did fine, and then I had him prepare them the year after, and he was going to cost me $2,000. And I was like, did you look at this thing? He was like, what thing? I was like, this thing I sent you. He's like, no, I didn't look at that thing. It doesn't matter. And then so I did my own taxes myself. I took an hour and a half and did them, and I was like, no, that's $2,000 cheaper than what you prepared for me. Now, the main thing about it is that guy was just a guy. It's just what he did. He just prepared taxes. He wasn't an accountant at all. He didn't go to school to be an accountant. He didn't have a CPA. He was just a guy. If you really trust someone, feel free. I don't recommend it. But if you want to have someone prepare your taxes, get a CPA, or at least someone who is a professional accountant. Now, there are a few circumstances where I would recommend you actually get your taxes prepared for you. Those three are if you earn over $100,000 a year, if you are self-employed, or if you happen to get any significant inheritance funds in a year. And the only reason I recommend you get someone to help you with your taxes in those situations is the fallout of doing it wrong is too substantial to screw up. For most of us, though, we can do them on our own, and they'll be accurate, they'll be fine. But if you fall in one of those categories, I would encourage you to hire a CPA to do your taxes. All right, debt. This is Dave's specialty, but I still have some things about it. Pay off your debt. That's kind of obvious, maybe it's not. Especially if you watch the sort of YouTube shorts that I do, because I'm an old person and I don't have TikTok, I just have YouTube shorts. Have you guys read the terms of service on TikTok? It's crazy. They'll steal everything from you. If you watch the sort of videos I do, people have all these reasons and excuses of why you shouldn't pay off your debt and why it's better to invest and so on and so forth. And I don't think that advice is very compassionate, because it is agnostic to people's situations or circumstances. And also, debt isn't a thing that God wants us to have around all the time. It's in the Bible, and it's not just forbidden. It's just laid out that if you're in debt, you are a slave. You are a slave to whoever you owe money to. It doesn't say you shouldn't have debt. It just says that's your circumstance. So if you want to be in that circumstance, there you go. If you don't want to, don't have debt if you can help it. So pay it off. Pay it off as aggressively as you're comfortable with. Dave Ramsey will get you all jacked to pay off your debt as fast as possible, and that's a good thing, and I'm glad he does that, and I want you to do that. But I'm also going to tell you as aggressively as you're comfortable with, because you need to come up with a sustainable pace to actually get it done. And if you're throwing a whole bunch of money at something and you burn out and you're feeling like it's not worth it, then you're going to stop. So with anything, you need to find a pace that is sustainable, just like if you were running a race. There's a lot of different methods for paying off debt. A couple buzzword ones you could Google if you want. There's Dave Ramsey's debt snowball method. Very effective, very good. It works on human psychology super well. And then there's what all the finance bros on YouTube recommend, the debt avalanche method. And they're just inverses of one another. They're both effective. They're just opposites. All right, this one's really close to my heart. This is something I encountered someone in my life, and I just really wanted to communicate this to you guys because it was a trap that someone I know fell into. All right. If this part doesn't make sense and you want it to make sense, come ask me at the end because it's important, and I just hope I don't miss any nuance of it. Never consolidate debt from something less essential into something more essential, unless there is a significant difference in the interest rate between the two that you think makes it worth it. Now, what do I mean for that? What I mean is, imagine you have a mortgage, a car loan, and student loans, and for this example, let's say they all have the exact same interest rate. So 3 different forms of debt, same interest rate. What happens if you default on each of them? What happens if you default on your student loans? Anybody have an opinion or a guess on that? I personally don't know. You can't actually ever go bankrupt on your student loans. They will follow you forever. If you die, sometimes your family has to pay for them. So if you don't pay your student loans, I think they probably garnish your wages or something. Like, you're going to pay them one way or another. But that's all. It gets worse. What happens if you don't pay your car loan? They repo your car, which is, pretty inconvenient. And especially if you've built up equity, cars aren't assets, but if you've paid some of it off, you lose all of that if you can't pay your car loan. So maybe you want to pay your car loan before you pay your student loan. No, I'm going to redact that. I'm redacting that right now. I don't know. But what's the worst one? This is what I'm trying to get at. Mortgage. What if you don't pay your mortgage? The bank forecloses on your house, and it leaves you and your family homeless. So this is what I was getting at with consolidating debt into more essential assets from less essential assets. Don't take out like a HELOC loan. That's a home equity line of credit, unless you're going to use it on your house. But even then, I just don't think it's a really good idea. Anything that makes the financial stability of your domicile less stable, bad choice. Don't do it. So don't get a HELOC, but also don't use like the profits from the sale of your previous primary residence to pay off like your student loans or your car loans. Keep those there. Take the proceeds from your sale of your house and put them towards the debt you owe on your next house. Your house is your most important asset. You and your family live there. Don't let it get foreclosed on, and don't use money you earn from selling a house to pay for anything besides a house. Unless you are totally out of debt and don't have a mortgage, I guess. Which I don't think that's the audience I'm talking to. So, all right, we talked about the financial counseling, so that's there. All right, and then at the end, resources. These are things I use all the time. I recommend you guys try out. Budgeting. There's a lot of things to try. Try things out, whatever you want to do. I really like EveryDollar. EveryDollar.com. That's Dave Ramsey's tool. There's a free version and there's a paid version. Don't do the paid version. It's not good enough to be worth it, mostly because two-factor authentication on bank accounts screws up their transaction synchronization. So when they're trying to import your transactions, it'll just be all ruined and bad, and then it takes more work to fix it. So it's honestly better just to do the free version where you type in your transactions manually. For two reasons. A, it doesn't get screwed up. B, you get intimately familiar with your spending habits, and you know what's going on. Takes a little bit more time, but it's worth it. So use EveryDollar. I did that. Oh, utilize the fund feature. That's one reason I like EveryDollar over anything else is it has a feature called fund where you have a budget line item, and if you mark it as a fund, the surplus or deficit in that budget line item rolls over month after month after month. So if it's something you need to save up for a period of time, like my trash bill is like quarterly, so it doesn't happen in a month. It happens every 3 months. I make that a fund. I haven't seen any other budgeting software that does that, which I always found very strange. All right. Net worth. Personalcapital.com is great for monitoring your net worth. You just put all of your financial accounts in there, your bank account, your 401k, your mortgage, the value of your house if you have a house, that's everything. Yeah. You put it all in there, and it gives you that actually also imports the transactions, which is great. So sometimes I'll have them both up. I'll pull up my Personal Capital, refresh it, and I'll pull up EveryDollar, and I'll just manually enter the transactions from Personal Capital. And instead of having to go to multiple bank accounts or anything, it's all right there, and it's really great. Disclaimer: they will call you and try to offer you investing services, and that's fine because I've actually listened to them, and their pitch is pretty good, and their rate's pretty good. So if you want to invest with them, you can. You don't have to, but they will call you like once a year and ask if you want to pay them to manage your portfolio. But if nothing else, it's just nice to be able to track the line of, how's my cash doing, how's my debt doing, and all this stuff. For tax preparation, there's a million of them. I like freetaxusa.com. It's literally free to file your federal and $13 to file your state, and you're done in an hour, and you don't have to think about taxes anymore. And then for anything else that you're financially curious about, nerdwallet.com is the Shangri-La of financial information. It is so well written. They have blogs about every topic you could ask for. And then they have calculators for every sort of financial query you might have. How much do I need to save for retirement? And what sort of debt should I pay off first? And how much is this mortgage going to cost me over 15 years or 30 years at these rates? I haven't even begun to delve into most of the stuff they have. But when I need to know something, NerdWallet has it, and it's fantastic. All right. This has been a really long time, and you guys have been incredibly patient. The last time I spoke in front of anybody, it was high schoolers, and you guys are much more mature than high schoolers, so I appreciate that. The last thing I want to talk about, and this is narrow casting, but I still want to throw it out there. If you have what you personally consider a substantial surplus Like you're just making more money than you really know what to do with, and you want to be a good steward of it. If has anyone ever heard of FIRE? Is that a phrase anyone's familiar with? Okay, it's kind of niche, but if that happens to be a situation you're in where you're like, what do I do with all this money that can be glorifying to God? I'd love to talk to you about that. I won't get into it now, like I said, because it's super narrow casting. And that is all the stuff I have written down, and I think it went longer than I wanted. But now Alex is going to help facilitate a Q&A.
All right. Well, can we thank Matt real quick for the time that he's given us? All right. So, we're going to do a time of Q&A. The way that we're going to do this is there's probably, I want to preface this in, there's probably a lot of financial opinions in this room. And there's probably a lot of different ideas, and there's probably a lot of different thoughts. So if you have a question or if you have something you want to pass along, text this number. That's the way we'll do this time, all right? So go ahead, and I want to give you guys a minute to text any questions in. But first, I wanted to pass along a couple thoughts to kind of bounce off of Matt's stuff. So first off, I want, just by a show of hands, who in here is like money you just think is boring and numbers are boring and things like that? I'm going to raise my hand, and I don't think Matt's going to be offended if you say that you find it boring. Who in here, does anybody find like numbers, money, anything like that boring? Okay. All right, well, I'm not alone at least. I was a little nervous. So, money and that stuff is not my realm. Dave has this thing that he says where there's always, in a relationship, there's typically a nerd and then there's a free spirit. Yeah. I am the free spirit between Sydney and I. If it were up to me, I just do whatever we want. Like I would never look at my bank account. And Matt is sitting here sweating next to me when I say that. So that is where my heart's at. I'm glad that God has given me somebody that I can bounce some of those ideas off of. But I say that because when I was in college, and when I was just out of college, I didn't really think too hard about money. And that was a mistake. Money is something that you think I don't want to think about it, I don't want to stress myself, I don't want to make myself anxious, but in reality, I would just end up digging myself in a hole, and ultimately, I'd dig my marriage into a hole if I wasn't thinking about money. And so I did Financial Peace University last winter before, and it is extremely beneficial. It is something that is really good, and some people go there because they have put themselves in a place where they're financially unstable and things do not look good. And then there's other people that are there because they want to get off on the right foot and they want to start doing things right. And I would tell you right now, as a young adult, whether you are just kind of moving into young adulthood or maybe you're kind of on your way out, it is a good place no matter what. I would encourage you to look into it. We offer it here at Redemption Chapel. I don't know when it is this year. Do you know when it's happening this year? I'm not sure.
They usually start advertising it in late fall, and then it starts mid-holiday season, or it might start in... Keep your eye out.
Yep.
Come on Sundays and you'll find out.
100%. Yeah, we'll push it out, and it'll be on our website and things like that. So I'd encourage you to look into it and signing up. It's a really good idea. It's helpful just to kind of get things rolling as a young adult. The other thing I want to let you know is if you're in here and you're thinking oh wow, I have a lot of different strategies than Matt has, and all these other ideas that I have, and maybe you are I know some of you guys, your job is to work with money, that's what you do. And if you have strategies, I'm all about it. One of the reasons that I asked Matt to come in here is because I know he has a lot of wisdom. He's talked to us about money. He's talked to us about helping high schoolers with money and things like that even too. And so I've also seen some of his leadership at FPU. And so, but this isn't what you do for work. This isn't what your career is. So there's wisdom and things that are understanding that are just from how you are living your life and what you've learned. So everybody's got some different strategies. Everybody's got different opinions, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. And last thing I want to say before we start getting into some of these questions is money is something that the Bible talks about a lot. Matt said that a few times. The Bible talks about money a lot. And you would think you're not supposed to love money. You're not supposed to have that at the top of your mind. And that's true. And that's why the Bible talks about it a lot, because it wants you not to be a slave to debt, not to be a slave to money. When you have money and when that's the thing that's hanging over you, that's the thing that's going to attract you. That's the thing that's going to make you draw closer to it. You are constantly going to be thinking about, I have to pay off this debt. I have to pay off this debt. Or Jesus often warns about the love of money is bad, because to love money is to love something other than God. So money is something that, although most people are like, we shouldn't talk about it. No, we should. Because we should be good about it. We should be responsible about it. And that's what God's word has given us. So I want to dive into these questions. I'm going to look through some of these here. But Matt, I was wondering, if you could share, what is one tip that you had, so you were in young adulthood and you're thinking about money, what is something that you would pass along to young adults that is like top priority? This is what you should do when you leave this room if you haven't already.
I honestly can't think of something higher priority than making sure you're getting all of your employer-sponsored 401k match. That's actual free money that all you have to do to get it is to eat out less once a month. And then you can save the money to get the free money. I can't think of anything more important than that.
Yep. I actually remember when my financial manager told me about that, and she was telling here at the church, she was telling me no, you should be doing this, and I'm like, but I'm putting it in what I'm supposed to. And she goes, no, you are literally ignoring free money. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm just going to trust you that you're doing this right for me. So, yeah, that's really good advice, though. That's a good thing. First question, and I want to also preface this with saying, if you're in here and you don't know a lot about money, or maybe some of the things that Matt was saying, you're like, I've never heard that phrase before, this is a good place to ask it. No, especially because you're texted it in. This is all anonymous, so if you think you have a dumb question, one, you probably don't, and two, nobody will know that you asked it. So if you have questions and you want to know something, this is a good spot to do it. First question, and this might be hitting on some of your points again, but how do you put money aside if you don't want to use a savings account?
Interesting. So I guess the idea being you don't want to put it in the bank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. How do you want to put money aside if you don't want to put it in the bank? You can always just put it in a fireproof safe in your house, safe deposit box. Probably the most effective method, if you actually have a goal in mind for the money, is to